Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection in California with Dr. David Jackson. David, can you get us started just by introducing yourself and also reflecting back to that moment when you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor, where you were at in life, what was going on with you, and what attracted you to this path?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, welcome and thank you for having me, Dr. Ben. And it's been, a few decades in this profession, and I've got an interesting story, but I'll try to make it quick. I was a professional skateboarder when I was a kid, and so I was always getting hurt. And I became good buddies with my orthopedic surgeon, Lance Robel, MD. And I just loved the fact that I didn't love the fact that I got busted up, but I loved the fact that every time I went there, he'd fix me. And, the long white flowing coat and the stethoscope was kind of alluring. I grew up really poor, with no vision and no real anything. And I decided about the third broken radius and ulna in that I was going to be a medical doctor. I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. And so I was super excited about it. I also did happen to love science, but not nearly as much as skateboarding and surfing. But I got passionate about this. So I wanted to be a medical doctor. And that's what I was pursuing. So I'm in high school now. And at 17, had my first girlfriend that I dated for a couple of years. And she was a chiropractic assistant, a CA. And I'll straight up, I was embarrassed. I could not believe that I love this girl, but man, she worked for a chiropractor, all I knew about chiropractic back then was what the medical community had told me, is that, they're not real doctors and they're this and they're that. And so I was kind of one of those guys that just thought, oh my gosh, whatever. I'm embarrassed that you even work at a chiropractic office. So one fateful evening, I was picking up some friends that had some car trouble. It was about 1 a.m. It was raining. It was obviously dark. And I had 2 in the back seat, 1 in the front seat, myself. And we're driving about 75 miles an hour down here in San Diego on the freeway. And I thought I saw something weird. And it turns out it was a black Mustang with no headlights coming at me on the wrong side of the freeway doing about 90. We had a head-on collision, got in a pretty bad accident. I didn't fare so well. Everyone lived, thank God. But ended up in the hospital with some pretty severe injuries, mostly to my neck and my arm, and 6 months of physical therapy and Lance Robel, MD. To make a long story short, I couldn't move my thumb and my first 2 fingers on my left hand, and was told I'd have to live with it. So finally, after 6 months of my girlfriend saying, you got to go to the chiropractor, you got to go to the chiropractor, I'm being straight up honest. I just wanted her to stop telling me to go to the chiropractor. So I went to the chiropractor, and just to humor her and get her to be quiet and quit telling me to go. And God is my witness, man. And this is not how chiropractic is intended to work or normally works, at least in my experience. But man, that chiropractor checked me out and gave me my first adjustment. I heard this loud popping noise. I thought, what the heck was that? And I kind of almost reacted like I was a bit of a punk when I was a kid. Like, what'd you do to me? And as I went like this, like, what'd you do to me? I realized I moved my fingers because I felt this bolt of lightning go down my hand. And real fast forward the end of the story, within about 2 minutes, I was asking him about where I should go to chiropractic school. And I became a chiropractor that day. And it just changed my life. And I'm like, I'm going to do that because I love working with my hands. And the idea that I don't even know what he did, but that he did that, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I had to apologize to my girlfriend, but that's the long and short of how I became a chiropractor.
And there's so many details to tease out of that, but you being a surfer, you said, I'm just curious of how your background and your upbringing and your demeanor and disposition really shaped the way that you approach chiropractic school, because you do bring who you are into the fold, and becoming a chiropractic student is kind of an identity shift.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what the timeline was like. So you decided that day you want to go to chiropractic school. How much time went in between that day and you actually starting? And what was that process like of you starting to wrap your head around this path that you were going to embark on?
Yeah, pretty aggressive, to be honest with you. And that I guess when I wasn't that aggressive because I didn't find that many things in my life that I really truly loved. And I didn't realize it yet, but I had fallen, like I found a purpose and, well, what I thought was a purpose and a passion. So I started going to night school. I was a junior in high school. I started going to night school and taking anatomy and physiology. I actually had to fib about my age to get into it. Was a junior college. And so I started accumulating prerequisites because I learned what they all were. I went, when I was a senior, I lived in Southern California. I went to a college up in Los Angeles. That's where my chiropractor went. I didn't really ask very many questions. I was like, well, he went there, I'll go there. I went there, toured the school, found out exactly what I needed to do. And to me, it was like a hit list, man. I just went, I'm like, when I found out I had to get chemistry and physics, I was like, oh man, because as a surfer, all I wanted to do was I was still a kid, man. I just wanted to play and be outside and be in the water, be on my skateboard. But I worked hard. And all I can say now is thank God I did, because it was the single best decision I've ever made in my entire life. And a decision that's also helped millions of people with their lives. And I truly mean that. And so, yeah, I graduated high school. I had no money. I'm not proud of this, but I was wow, you graduated high school kind of guy, like straight C's. So I went to a junior college because that's all I could get into. And I worked my butt off. Chemistry and physics were probably the hardest thing I've ever done because it's not my realm. Everything else I did really well in. And I moved from there and I went up to Cal State Fullerton and finished up my curriculum there. And I started chiropractic school in 1984. So about 3.5 years after I graduated high school. And in 1987, at the ripe age of 23 years old, I was a licensed chiropractor, which is kind of scary. And when I look back, I'm like 20, I was a kid, but I was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, to graduate from my college because I was aggressive. And you don't have to do that. But I was aggressive because I really wanted to get started with that. And that means I had to miss a lot. I had to sacrifice a lot. I mean, chiropractic school is it's not easy. It's not hard, but you have to be committed, right? It's a full-time job, but there is a lot to learn. And the biggest thing to learn is that once you get done with school, you got to keep on learning and be one of those people. So if you're someone who constantly likes to stay on the edge and be ahead and innovative, and as far as chiropractic, where it may seem like, well, you just use your hands, I would remove the word just. You get to change people's lives with your head, heart, and your hands. And it's an unbelievable profession. And I didn't even know this at the time. God is my witness. I had no idea. You can make a good living or you can make a phenomenal living. And I've chosen the latter, and I've ended up building a life that, I've traveled to, almost every continent. I've been to, 75 countries. I've taken my 3 daughters all around the world. I live a great life. And I think that's because, the people that solve big problems make big livings, and we solve a big problem. And it's a lot more than headaches and backaches that I thought it was when I first started chiropractic school.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of different things in that response there that are really epic. So I'm just wondering if you could reflect back on the epic life that you've been able to lead as a chiropractor, really just from a broader sense, a more of an overview over, how maybe you ran up against some challenges and obstacles, but you adapted and you pivoted, and ultimately you've been able to transform your life and leave a lasting legacy. I mean, it's been incredible. Can you kind of give us some background on what you're speaking to us from?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll actually back it up, because I remember in Chiro school, as I affectionately refer to it, we had a class fairly early on, and it was something like business managed. I don't know, like a business class. Frankly, it wasn't that great now that I know how to run a business. But at the time, he had to set a goal. And, I don't even want to say the number adjusting for inflation. It was in year of our Lord before any of you were born that are listening to this probably. So I'm not going to date myself too much. But I set a goal that I was going to make, and just humor me, okay? I was going to make $40,000 a year. And if I could do that, oh my gosh, that would be, and again, inflation is real, right? But even at the time, when I look back, that was such a pathetic goal. but I didn't know what was possible. I didn't know what you could actually do. I didn't know how valuable you could be in people's lives. But I also, I don't want to say this like as self-aggrandizing, but I'm a very authentic person. Like I don't know any other way. Like I'm just going to tell you the truth because I've had this deep principle. In fact, you can't see it up there, but next to those books is, I'm an author, best-selling author of a book called The Truth Will Do. And it's a book for chiropractors on how to really communicate value. But it comes from a process and a principle that I've always been truth-based. And I don't mean like, oh, I'm the most honest guy in the world, but I understand something from a young age. And, there's a saying, the truth shall set you free. But there's also a saying that says the truth hurts. And I'm a guy that's going, well, which one is it? How is that possible? That's a contradiction. That can't be true. But what I learned was that depending on where you stand in life, in a moment or on an issue, the truth's either going to hurt you or it's going to set you free. See, if you hear something and you're in contradiction, you're in stress, that truth is going to hurt. It's going to leave a mark. It's going to make you question things, which is what it's supposed to do, by the way. So pain's not a bad thing. But if you're standing in congruence and alignment, the truth just sets you free. And so when I started learning more about the truth, about what health really was, the difference between our two systems, at least in North America, and without going into great detail, we have the world's best sick care system, but it's lauded and celebrated as a healthcare system. And it's not. It's not semantics. It is a system that requires one thing of everyone to enter it: to be sick, right? To have a disease or a process or a bacteria or a virus or an injury. And we're the best in the world at that. But it's not healthcare. And I didn't even know that going into chiropractic school. But when I started understanding what health really was, you can look it up in Dorland's medical dictionary. And it says health is not merely the, state of optimal physical, mental, and social well-being, nor just it's not just the absence of disease or infirmity, but a state of optimal physical, social, and mental well-being. And I thought, wow, that's a whole different, like, who does that? And when I realized I do, that's what a chiropractor does. It started changing my entire outlook on the world. And so I had this authentic approach, and I just wanted to tell people. I was afraid to tell people about who I was or what I did. And then I became afraid not to, because I was so compelled to help people live this healthier life. But at the same time, and Ben, most people don't do this, but one of the things I teach chiropractors to do is, I believe, and again, this is just Dr. David, but I believe that a business, I'm not talking about a purpose or a passion or all those things we're talking about right now, but a business exists to fund your personal life, right? You have a job and a business, and you've got a huge purpose as a chiropractor, as a care provider, as a neighbor, as a father, as a husband or a wife, as a friend. You've got so many purposes in life, and everyone has them. Most haven't consciously identified them. I've gone through work to identify mine. So I've got a purpose as a chiropractor that's massive, but the purpose of my business is to fund my personal life. And because I kind of grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, but I also had a vivid imagination, I wanted to see the world I never had. So I wanted to build a business to fund a life where I could surf around the world and dive around the world and show my girls that, I have 3 daughters that are grown now, but show them that, yeah, even though we live here in a multi-million-dollar home right near the beach in San Diego, that this is not the world. This is our world. Worked hard to create it, blessed and fortunate, but I want them to go to Indonesia and dig in the rice paddies with little 18-month-olds that are picking rice already, right? I wanted them to know the world. So I had to build a business that let me do that. And man, thank God that chiropractic provided that too, because you can really, again, I said it earlier, but when you provide a service that's solving someone's big problem, you get a big reward, and the rewards have been amazing. And also, I've always been entrepreneurial in spirit. I was a poor kid, but I had an addiction. It was called skateboarding, and I had no money. So I sold tomatoes and I washed cars and I mowed lawns and I babysat. I would do anything to help somebody so I could get a new set of trucks or new deck or new wheels or travel to a skate park and go skate with Tony Hawk, which I used to do when I was young, that kind of stuff. Right. So this whole profession allowed for me to experience and explore my biggest purpose, which is to help people and remove suffering from the world, but also provided me a lifestyle. And it ain't free, meaning, yeah, I did 7-8 years of hard work. But Ben, one thing that I always tell you, I've sent so many patients to chiropractic school. I would handpick them, by the way. I didn't just, this wasn't, like I'd see I'd be taking care of a 7-year-old, and before I'd adjust them every day. I'd say, man, you're going to make a great chiropractor. Man, you're going to make a great chiropractor. Because I could tell. And I wanted them. And I wanted it for the world. I wanted it for them. I wanted it for the communities they were going to serve. But it's work. But I'd always tell them, they go, yeah, but doesn't it take like 8 years? And I go, yeah, it's interesting. How old are you? They go, I'm 18. I'm like, how old are you going to be in 8 years? Well, 26. So you could be 26 working at the grocery store. You could be 26 working in your own practice, being an entrepreneur and setting your own hours and your own fees and living your own dreams. 8 years is still going to go by. And in hindsight, it goes by fast. So I'm so glad I made that decision, and that I've helped other chiropractic prospective patients make that decision and help chiropractors make better decisions, because ultimately the world needs us. And we need to do something that fulfills our purpose, but that also allows us to live a life that, I've deemed it as an epic life. I mean, I've got an epic love affair with my wife for 33 years, just celebrated our 33rd anniversary, and 3 amazing kids. And I can pretty much do anything I want. And I'm not bragging, man. I worked hard for it, but I would not have it any other way. I mean, I'm a car guy. I gave up an offer to be a professional race car driver, have the guy I worked with build the car for me. And I decided at 17 and a half years old, no, I'm going to be a chiropractor. And all my friends were like, you are the dumbest. Dude, you've always wanted to be a race car driver, which I did. And I still do. But man, I'm so glad I said no, because I've helped, like I said, millions of people, and lived an incredible life as an effect of that. Because honestly, you know why? Because chiropractic is honoring a law, and it's honoring the law of cause and effect. And I think that's what a chiropractor does. And you mentioned a great term, Doctor. You said, that it's, talk about adapting, and that's what chiropractic does. I'm not going to get too much into philosophy right now, but it doesn't just treat people's pain and make them feel better. It allows their body to communicate with the generator, with the brain. It's like having 5 bars on your cell phone. I mean, that's cool, but it's life and death. If your daughter's stranded on the side of the road and you can't communicate with her, and she doesn't know what to do, and she's in traffic, and I only got 1 bar, that interference now, that disturbance between that signal, that's a problem. I get to work with that with people, because there's disturbances between the brain and how it tells your body to heal and work, and my heart to beat, my lungs to breathe, and my kidneys to filter, and my immune system to watch out and to react when it sees something. So you said, how have you had to adapt? That's what I do as a profession. I help people adapt to their circumstances better. And when you do that, you honor the law of cause and effect, because if there's a disturbance, it's going to affect the way the body produces, no matter how they feel. And I just love that. I love that I can help people adapt, because, man, life is stressful. Lots of different times in life are stressful. And instead of treating that with drugs or chemicals or surgery, or trying to say, hey, you got too much in your body, let's cut them out. You don't have enough in, let's put it back in. I get to look at it and go, whoa, wait. You're built to be well. Why aren't you? So I get that. Now I get to be that little CSI investigator and go, you've had your eyes checked, your heart checked, your height, your weight checked, your blood pressure checked, your cholesterol. You've had everything checked. Have you ever had the system that literally animates and controls your entire human body, the nervous system? You ever had it checked? No. Let's start there. And I can tell you so many things I'm grateful for, and so many cards and gifts, and you saved my child, you did this, you did that. I didn't do it. I'm the guide, but their body heals. And I just know how to remove the interferences so that it does that. And to me, it's like, man, how did I get dipped into the lucky sauce? Because I just, not a day go by that I'm not grateful. I love it. So I think anyone that's kind of in that, I want to do something to help people, and they do like to use their hands. And if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, even better. Because hey, I practiced 17 hours a week. Why? Because I could. I wanted to take my kids to school every day and teach for 2 hours, and I wanted to be home at dinner every day, and I didn't ever want to work a Friday, so I didn't. And then I still was able to build a 7-figure business because I was solving a problem and helping people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just really quickly to just touch on my background, I went to Western States to start, and I went to the Oregon Chiropractic Association, heard you speak, heard a couple people speak. I went up to you afterwards. There was definitely like a clarity in my mind that where I was at was not congruent with what chiropractic was that I was hearing from you and from many other people in the room that day. And I transferred, and I found myself fortunate for that, almost privileged for that, to be thinking to go to a professional conference on the weekend while I'm only in my second quarter at a school, and then to go and transfer the next week or 2 weeks later down to a completely different school. And I became involved with your Epic Practice online modules as a student, and got exposure to your Practice Pros, where you would have conversations like we're having right now and tease apart the details of what made chiropractors, tick. And basically, I just want to say that my premise with this project, just to expand the context for you, the prospective student audience has rarely, if ever, been focused on with such passion and like so much obsession of how can we prepare these students to get to chiropractic school with clarity of what chiropractic is, a focus on who they want to become, like a vision for who they want to become. And I just want to acknowledge you for the help that you've given me through the years. And that's a lot of the inspiration for what really is at the forefront of my mind, which is if I could give students a little bit of what I was given, that I will have made a huge difference on the entire profession. Really, it wouldn't matter what school students went to, as long as they had that fire inside and they knew why they were going to become a chiropractor. So just in centering your voice on the prospective student audience, if you could maybe, the way that I'm sort of frameworking the skill building model is to break Nate up into your inner scientist, thinker, artist, teacher, entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. You mentioned entrepreneur a couple times. How can we sprinkle some progressions into this garden that we're planting seeds in of the minds of these prospective students that are one day going to become chiropractors? Maybe it's 8 years from now that they get their license, but how can they start walking the path to become better entrepreneurs or teachers or artists? Or maybe just speak from your experience of how you developed yourself. And also, lastly, I know that you were really heavily involved in doing pediatric care and taking care of lots of kids. So if you could also just touch on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, it's so rewarding to hear a story from someone like you, because, I didn't go to that event with an intention to have people transfer schools, but I went to that event with an intention of telling the truth. And it's my truth, but obviously it was yours as well. And you found this incongruency, right? Because the truth hurt. You're like, that's not what I'm learning. And without getting too into the politics, everything, look, there's red states and blue states, right? And we can talk about it until we're blue in the face. Doesn't matter. There's differences of schools of thought, schools of opinions. And one of the most important things that you decide pre-Chiro school, it will change, it will morph, and it will grow. But is, what do I really want to do? Not because your mother, father, teacher, preacher, or your chiropractor told you this is what I did, this is what you should do. I did that, by the way. I followed it. And after 2.5 years in practice, and I was struggling my first 2.5 years, I realized that because I was following someone else's vision, someone else's dream, I wasn't being authentic to myself. This isn't what I really wanted to do. It wasn't the style. I was taking care of Billy Bob back pain. And Billy Bob that has back pain still needs chiropractic care. But I love kids. I love families. I love wellness and vitality and energy. And And I want to help people that have real challenges, not just that they slip and fell and hurt their back, which is a real challenge for a lot of people. So, but there's schools of thoughts. And so one of the first things you want to do is listen to things like what Dr. Glass is sharing here, getting different perspectives from different people and finding out what your perspective is, and realizing that all of our perspectives come from our belief systems that have been instilled in us, and before we could actually buy them. But even as adults, we're buying our beliefs. People are selling us every single day on how we should think. But as you start this process, I think that this is tough work, by the way, but one of the single most important things you could do is say, what do I really believe about this? Because those beliefs are going to end up compelling you to take actions. Choose a school. I chose a school. Why? It was 2.5 hours from my house. I could go home on weekends. If I had to do it over again, I wouldn't choose that school again. Was it bad? No. It wasn't congruent with the kind of chiropractor I wanted to become. So there's kinds of chiropractors. Yeah, there's, proctologists, and there's gynecologists, and there's pediatricians, and there's oncologists. And I'm not talking about a specialty. They're different schools of thoughts. There's holistic doctors and very mechanical doctors. So you want to decide, and for me, it's like, I already said this, the sick care system is really good and it's really full. There's a lot of people there, very competitive. The healthcare wellness space, not so competitive. Oh, you got a lot of people that with nutrition and yoga, but no one can do what I can do. Nobody. So I think the first thing is to say, what do you really want? And start looking at different schools of where to go. And ultimately, chiropractic is founded on 3 tenets: philosophy, science, and art. The art is the adjustment. There's hundreds of ways. Eventually, I do the Jackson technique, right? The Dr. David technique. I amalgamate all these different things I've learned. There's no one way to do it. Just like there's no one way to do a painting, but there will be your way. So you want to go to school, it's going to teach the art. They all do, right? That's what we do. The science is the science. And most schools are going to teach you science because that's what's on your boards and that's what's on your exams. You got to learn the science. The philosophy gets cast aside as if it's some stepchild sometimes. But to me, the philosophy is the why you do what you do. It's the most important thing. And I'm not talking about, pipe and patches on your coat. I'm talking about that belief system of who do you want to be? So there are certain schools, not hard to find out. You ask me, ask Dr. Glass, ask anybody that would say, hey, if I was going to go to school today, or if my child was going to go to school, I'd send him here, here, or here, right? There's several of them. And maybe they're not, one of the ones I'd send my kids to is in New Zealand, pretty far away. But I've spoken down there. I know the staff. I'm dear friends with the president and the research people, and they are doing stuff amazing. There's great schools in Northern California. The guy that literally saved my chiropractic life when I was struggling is president of Life West, right? Dr. Ron Oberstein. And Life in Georgia. I mean, there's a bunch of great schools. Sherman, there's great schools. But you don't want to choose one out of convenience. You want to choose one. It's not about Harvard versus Yale. It's what do you want to leave with? What kind of culture is going on in that school? And I think that's a really important thing to do. What you fall in love with now will probably change. Oh, I want to do sports. Cool. Maybe you end up graduating and you want to get your specialty in sports. But maybe during school, like me, you realize, wow, I want to take care of kids. Now, when I went to school, they didn't teach me how to do that. So I had to learn it on my own, which is fine. You can do that too. I teach chiropractors how to do these things. But it's really deciding this is the kind of life I want to do. And speaking of kids, one of the reasons I'm passionate about even calls like this and behind what you're doing, Dr. Glass, is because I wanted to adjust children, not just because I love children, because I just kind of had this idea, right? This belief system, call it, that if I could help them early on to make sure that they are functioning at 100% as often as possible from birth through the rest of their life, then they're going to not have to go through so much of what every other adult is going to go through. Like if I could just get them on the right track. And let me give you a very personal and biased example. I have 3 daughters. My youngest is now 25. My oldest is 30. They've never had a drug in their body. What? They haven't need. I'm not against them. They haven't needed one. They're healthy. They're expressing their potential. They've been adjusted since the day they were born, right? They think very differently than other children. I mean, very differently. They've always performed better than most other children on the field, in the classroom, everywhere else. Why? Because I have great genetics. I'm a great father. Heck yeah. But that's not really why. I believe it's because they were raised with their bodies functioning as close to 100% of their potential and optimal vitality as possible, as often as possible. And they've been able to experience life better. They don't have as many filters on as other people. And so people tell me how lucky I am all the time. And it's really not luck. It's a philosophy that I've raised my family with. And I've helped tens of thousands of families raise their kids that way too. And so the reason I'm excited and honored to be on this call is because I'm talking to kids. And you might be an adult that's looking at a second career. I'm still talking to kids in chiropractic sense. You haven't been born yet. The birth process is pretty traumatic, right? I'm teaching you things to make that birth process easier and less traumatic, so that when you go through it, hard work, but that the results are there. So that philosophy, that science, and that art, when you combine it, you have this beautiful 3-legged stool, which you can stand upon and then practice however you want to practice. You know, whatever styles, whatever hours, whatever location. I mean, I've had the privilege of adjusting people all over the world, and it's amazing how you don't even have to speak the language because the power of touch, and you have your tools with you all the time. I mean, it's just a really, really cool thing. It's expensive to get into. It's an investment in your education, but fortunately, you could pay down those student loans really quick because you've got this ability to solve problems and to build a business out of it as well. So it's not just this service thing. It's service with a smile, but there's also rewards on the other side of it. I know there are a couple other things you asked me, but I probably forgot.
Well, there's ways to go with this, but I would love to get creative with you for a moment. And so I'm acknowledging that you've spent some time with our friend ChatGPT. I have as well, over 100 hours myself. And basically, when looking at the prospective student or even the current Chiro student, we have now the ability as humans in an educational experience to take the information that's coming in and creatively morph it into a way that we want to self-express. I mean, it's giving the self-expressor an opportunity like that's never existed before,
Right.
at least from an efficiency standpoint. So if we had a pre-Chiro clubs popping up on campuses around the world with students who have gone through level 1 of the foundations, understand what chiropractic is, why people become chiropractors, listening to a number of different people explain to them the science, philosophy, art, and then they've gone through some skill building of developing within themselves the inner scientist, the inner uninhibited thinker, the inner artist, the inner teacher, inner entrepreneur. Now they're out in different clinical settings and gaining observation hours, doing the apprentice model. Now they've become eligible to start their own pre-Chiro club. I'm just curious from your standpoint how we can leverage technology, let's just call it, with the clarity and passion that these students have in new places like high schools and college campuses to impact their communities, to transform the lives of the people on their college campuses or high school campuses using technology, the structure of having a pre-Chiro club, and their own inner passion to share chiropractic.
Yeah, it's a big question. And the specific technology mentioned is, again, talking about children. I mean, I refer to as an infant in a cradle still. I mean, it hasn't even crawled yet. And it's amazing, right? Because life is amazing. And you can, I'm an innovator. I just have always liked to be on the cutting edge because I'm curious by nature. So, and with AI and Chat GPT, I call it Chatty G. There's a lot of things to be worried about too. But, I could say, man, I wish the cell phone was never invented. I'm tired of seeing all these kids on it all the time. I go out to a beautiful restaurant with my wife, and there's people that are spending $500 for dinner and they're on their phones the whole time, a couple. And I'm like, man, put it down, right? But it's just a tool like anything else. And that tool can be used for good and evil like anything else. It's like people that think that money makes you, changes you. No, money expands you. It expands who you are. If you're a jerk and you get money, you're going to be one of those people that you read about in the paper, right? Or there are no papers online, but if you're a nice person, you're going to be a philanthropist. I've donated, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to charity because I'm a kind person and I have some ability to do that, right? So I think that technology, including ChatGPT and AI in its infancy, one of the things that is fascinating is I've been talking to chiropractors like, well, thank God, as a chiropractor, I'm not going to need it because you can't replace me. And I'm like, don't be so sure. And I don't mean can a robot adjust? Yeah, it can. Robots can adjust. They can do surgery. They can do heart surgery. They can certainly use an instrument to do an adjustment. Do people want an adjustment by a robot? No, they don't, because they want the human touch. So I have zero concerns about you investing in an education and having a robot take your job. But I would, as a young person, for sure, young in a profession or young at heart or young in age, right? I would be looking at this technology and saying, all right, what can I learn from it now to make myself better? And I'll give you a quick side note. Two of my, I have several companies, but one of them, like Dr. Glass mentioned, I help chiropractors in the business of chiropractic, right? Like how to communicate better and how to have better systems and how to market and all the things that we don't really necessarily understand with most different people. So these guys, there's a husband and wife, they became paying members, paying what a doctor pays me, which is not cheap. Their first semester in school, they spent their student loans on my membership. I didn't even know this for about 2 years, but fast forward now, they graduate. Look, there's always a period to ramp up in their second year in practice. The average, just for some clarity, and there's lots of differences here, so don't get too locked in on this. The average chiropractor serves about 100 people a week, right? They're pretty busy. By the end of their second year, they were serving 800 patient visits a week. Like, huge practice. They were making well over 7 figures cash. Why? Because as students or pre-students, they started acting as if, yes, you got to learn microbiology and bacteriology and toxicology and chemistry and all this stuff that you may or may not love and you may or may not use. You got to learn all the things about the nervous anatomy and physiology and adjusting and, all this stuff, right? It's all great. Some you'll use, some you won't. But there's always that extra time, that extra opportunity to continue to use technology to learn about the things that make you a better person as a chiropractor. What do I mean by that? The number one thing a chiropractor needs to be able to do is to communicate, because we work with communication. We work with the brain's ability to communicate to the body. Well, we got to be able to communicate to the brain. And here's what I mean by that. Mary's going to come in as a new patient, maybe 9 years from now, 7 years from now, whatever it is. She's going to come in. She's going to be your first patient. She's going to have a headache. Mary with a migraine, right? And she's going to go, wow, this hurts. And Joe told me you could help me. And you may say, I've had good success with migraines. How long has it been bothering you? Where does it hurt? What to do? All the typical questions you're going to find out. And you can adjust her a couple times and her headache's probably going to get better. But is Mary better because her headaches are gone? See, we need to start being able to communicate. Mary, I'm concerned about these headaches, but I'm concerned more so about why does your body have them in the first place? Why are they there? Because even if you got hurt, I told you earlier, I broke my bone, broke my arm 5 times. And yeah, I had a cast. I had, 4 surgeries. I had things that had to help it. But did the surgeries, the casts, the plates, the screws, the plaster, did that heal my arm? And a little morbid, but if we went into a morgue and broke a cadaver's arm and put the same plates, the same surgery, the same screws, and the same plaster cast, and just waited 6 or 8 weeks and took it off, is it going to be better? The answer is obviously no. Why? Well, because life heals. So I've got to learn how to understand that first, really own that philosophy of what we call ADIO, above, down, inside out, that the brain, the power of the body that made the body is actually what heals the body. And it doesn't mean when you're sick, you don't need help sometimes. I needed a cast, I needed plates, I needed screws, right? But that's not what heals. My body knits that bone together. And you're going to learn all about that in chiropractic school. But what you can learn now is what that means to you. What else you can learn now is your ability to communicate, to ask questions. And that's where I think, specifically to what you said, I had a training with my Epic Docs just about 2 weeks ago. And I pulled up ChatGPT, right? An AI program, for those of you that maybe you're not into it yet. And I said, hey, let's take a look at what ChatGPT could teach us, not by using the program, but by looking at it as a patient. Because there's an old computer term that applies to life. It's called GIGO. Garbage in, garbage out. You put garbage in your mouth, you're going to get garbage out. You sleep in a garbage bed, you're going to feel like garbage in the morning. You put garbage in your mind from the news every day, you're going to be in a high state of sympathetic dominant stress all day long. Garbage in, garbage out. If you take ChatGPT and you put in a garbage prompt, yes, like a really basic question, it's so damn smart. It's going to give you a good answer. And most people are going to go, great. That's the email I'm going to write. That's what I'm going to put on my website. That's what I'm going to put on my resume to apply to Life West to go to chiropractic school. I'm going to do that. See, I don't do that. What I do is I go, cool, interesting. What's a better question? Mary, can I ask you a question about your headache? Why do you still have it? Well, I don't know. Well, is your body supposed to heal? I've had a headache. I don't have one anymore. You still have yours. Why? I've never thought of that before. See, I'm going to ask Mary a better question. So I'm asking ChatGPT a question. It gives me a good answer, like better than most people could ever produce. But I'm going to go, but wait a minute. Could I ask it a better question? Could I ask it to assume a role as an expert? Could I ask it to play like it's, maybe in a voice of Abraham Lincoln, old Honest Abe, if I want an honest answer? Or maybe can I ask it something? Can I get better being Socratic and interviewing? Could I ask better interview questions so that they go, ChatGPT goes, hang on a second. It's a great question. In fact, I was having ChatGPT interview me recently, and I gave it my feedback. And this first time I got freaked out by AI. It said, wow, it came back instead. It was just question 1, question 2, question 3. And I was answering, right? I was answering the question. Ask me another one. And I was going through a process of building a bio. I was going to teach people how to do this. I already have mine, but I was going through it. And I answered a question that said, wow, that's really interesting and extremely inspirational. You got all of that by deciding to become a chiropractor? ChatGPT asked me that, like I inspired a robot, which is a little bit freaky. Why? Because I learned to ask better questions, because the essence of chiropractic is all about communication. And most people get so busy with getting their grades that they forget to start learning how to be a human who's about to become a chiropractor, because that's what helps you succeed and help people. In 30 plus years of practice, no one ever asked me what my GPA was, right? Look, I graduated with honors and I passed all my boards and got my license and all of that. So, but no one cared about that. You know what they cared about? That I cared. Not how much I knew, how much I cared. You care because you learn about empathy. You learn about personalities, you learn about communication, you learn processes. And chiropractors that are, or I'm calling them kids today, these days, that are considering, if that's you and you're considering, maybe I'm thinking about being a physical therapist or maybe a pharmacist or maybe, no, listen to me, no, like your parent. Chiropractic done right, which is up to you, by the way, is for me the most, it's not for everyone, but it's the most rewarding profession you could ever have because of the things you get to do so simply, and because you can do it affordably, and because you get to build relationships with people. They don't come to you every time they break their bones. I mean, some people, I've seen them hundreds of times over their lifetime. I mean, you get to know people and they respect you and you build that. So the things that a student can do now in these clubs is, it's funny because everyone wants to just, even they're like, well, teach me how to adjust. That's a tool you'll learn later. This tool, heart and head, connecting those, figuring out what motivates people, learn about human psychology. The reason I'm really good at what I do is because I'm a CSI investigator. I want to know why people think the way they do. I want to know why. I'm going to ask Chad again. And so I asked it again, and I asked the better questions, and all my clients are watching. I'm like, better email, isn't it? I asked them let's market a class, or let's write me an email for a pregnancy workshop I'm going to do for the public. And it did a great job, better than most chiropractors could ever do on their own, because they're not copywriters. I am one, I'm trained. But then I said, really good, right? And everyone's like, oh, they're taking pictures of it, like they're going to do that. And I go, well, this is what you do. Don't do that. Ask a better question, refine it, get more, ask better. I teach this I didn't make this up, but 7 levels of why. It's like, why are you here today? I have a headache. Why do you have a headache? Oh, well, I got in a car accident a while ago. Why hasn't the headache gone away? I'm 3 levels down. Well, you've been to all these different doctors before, and they've given you Band-Aids and drugs and this, and they've even a chiropractor before. Why isn't it better? I don't know. That's why I'm here. Well, has anyone ever assessed your nervous system and that system you live your life through? No. I wonder why, right? I'm 6th level. So now I'm getting to the real purpose of why they're there. They don't teach that in any chiropractic school I know of, but you can start experimenting with it now and using technology as a literally name it Mary with a migraine, and talk to her even before you go to chiropractic school and see what you learn. It's fascinating. And it's, I always tell people that it's better to make your mistakes now than when you're with a patient, right? You don't want to make a mistake with a patient. And I don't mean like hurt them like an adjustment mistake. I've never had that happen. Could, but I've never had it happen. I'm talking about like where you don't know how to answer someone and they go, oh, let me go think about it. Because you know what I just did? I just lost an opportunity to help that person. And they're probably going to go back into the sick care system, take some medications, have a reaction, get sick, get hospitalized. I'm going to find out. I'm going to feel guilty. I'm going to feel horrible, and I'm not going to sleep again. Right? So I know that's pretty deep, but I just believe you have an opportunity now to do the real work. And like that husband and wife chiropractor, that when they graduated, they were light years ahead of everyone else. Same adjusting skills, same science skills, same GPA, same everything they learned, same science, same art, but they started really working on their philosophy, their belief system, who they were and what you wanted to share, how you want to be perceived. Most chiropractors are like every other human, and we're driven by the primary human need to be loved and accepted. And everyone has that need. Everyone wants it. But I wanted more than that. I wanted to help people regardless of how it made me feel. And that is a process that even in pre-chiro, you can really start working on. I don't know if that answers your question, Dr. Glass, but
come on. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And yeah, there's so much there. So thank you. I think you've given some great prompts for prospective students to go through and reflect within themselves, and obviously chiropractic. I recently went back to Life West, started teaching adjusting just 2 hours a week in the morning, and I use that 9:20 break after I'm supposed to leave to just lead a different type of club through a series of questions and explorations so that they can have an experience which is extracurricular outside of the typical experience of being talked at, and they can actually practice and self-express what it's like to be a chiropractor through different scenarios, right? There's so many different things. Can you maybe just kind of unpack how you got into Epic Pediatrics and that project, and Tony Ebel and your work, and then the Epic Vision events that you've put on, and why are you constructing these things, and what have you been able to observe as far as patterns within the profession, like different chiropractors, how you see it changing over these last 20, 30 years that you've been in the role that you've been in? Like, where are we at today? Where is the profession heading? What are the opportunities that are emerging right now, and also the challenges that you're witnessing maybe from new chiropractors as they're coming out?
Yep.
Or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that first and foremost, because I had struggled my first couple years in practice, because I was just trying to do what everyone taught me, but I wasn't thinking for myself, and I wasn't being congruent and authentic, and it just didn't work. And ironically, like I said, Ron Oberstein, who's the president of the college you're working at now, part-time, was a chiropractor down here in San Diego. And I had another different girlfriend at the time. This is 5 years later. And he got a hold of my what I call my above atlas, that's the top bone of your neck, my mindset, and said, what are you thinking? You got to look at it this way. And just one conversation one night in his office for a couple hours changed my whole life. And I just went in a different direction in my practice, and everything started working. And so that was a massive mindset shift for me. And all of a sudden, things started happening, and people watch, friends watch, colleagues watch, other chiropractors are watching. And, I started getting invited to go speak on stages at colleges and seminars. And, I've probably spoken in front of 100,000 chiropractors, some of those multiple times, obviously, but, on so many different continents all over the world. And I loved it. But you know what? I love my wife and my kids. And I was gone almost every weekend speaking on behalf of the profession. It wasn't a business. I was doing it on my own dime. I'm paying my own flights, paying my own hotels, but I'm just trying to help. But I woke up in a hotel room one day and I said, what am I doing? I love this, but I love my wife more. I love my kids more. Got to be a different way. And this was, when technology wasn't quite there yet, like the internet was just started, to be honest with you. And, but I thought, there's got to be a better way. So I thought outside the box, and I created the first online training program for chiropractors, because I wanted to continue to do what I did, but I wanted to make it easier for them and easier for me. So we didn't have to go anywhere. We could do this, it was before Zoom existed. So yeah, I was on phone calls with programmers in Pakistan trying to figure out, I didn't know how to send an email, but I'm figuring out how to do membership sites and logins and all this stuff. You mentioned Practice Pros, that was podcasting before podcasting was cool, but I did video casts, and audio cast and just all this different stuff. And it all came from that same place I'm talking about with students, is like that desire to serve, that desire to help. Because I realized that, I could adjust, like I had a busy practice. I adjusted a lot of people. But what if I could help 100 chiropractors adjust more people? What if I could help 1,000 chiropractors? What if I've served over 8,700 chiropractors that have been my members. And those people, we've got the statistics, we've helped over 100 million people. By me teaching chiropractors, they've made an extra $1 billion. I'm not making that. This is literally, we've been tracking our numbers, our KPIs with our offices for 15 years. And my partner's a double PhD. He's a smart dude. Invented baked Lay's potato chips. Smart guy, right? He's not a chiropractor. So he introduced himself as a doctor who can't save anybody. But he saved me because he's helped me so much to understand business and everything else. But we've made big impact through that. And my whole goal is to create impact and to help people help people. And so that's how that whole process got started. It's why I'm still in it today, even though I don't need to be. It's why I'm still on the edge, because I love serving. And I also want to help chiropractors help more people. I love chiropractors. I care about them deeply. But the only reason I actually talk to them is to help people, like moms and dads and kids. Right? So they're my guide. And I'm going to train the guides so that they know how to take them down the river without hitting the boulders, but having the great ride, right? That's what I do. And so because of that, I do sit in a pretty interesting position, Not long ago, Dr. Oberstein, invited me out to dinner and said, "Hey, can I pick your brain about the future of chiropractic and where we're going and where Life West is and da 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 da?" Because I've got this perspective and I can be really clear with it. What I see is I see chiropractors struggle. It's hard. They get out of practice, they got a student loan, and they struggle. And I know why they struggle, which is the important thing. They struggle because of the choices they made. They struggle because they try to be like everybody else. And they also struggle because as a profession, so many of us, and I include myself in that in the past tense, but so many of us fought for acceptance. We just wanted to be a real doctor. We wanted to be treated the same. And so we fought for insurance and we wanted to wear a white coat and we wanted to sound like a doctor. So we said, well, Mary, you have neurospinal kinesiopathology, and it made me feel smart. Right. And I'm not being sarcastic, like we want to be accepted, right? It's a primary need. And so when we do that, the problem is we've put ourselves in a sick care arena that we don't belong in, number one, and is already really busy. And we now get compared to people that are better at that than we are. Lance Robles better at fixing a broken bone than Dr. David is, right? So on the other hand, I see chiropractors that embrace what we've been talking about and philosophy and adjusting families and realizing that, I felt so, I don't know if you've ever had food poisoning, Dr. Glass, or if you have, right? But I can promise you, if you have and you got a good case of it, like I've had a couple times, you don't feel so good. In fact, you feel like crap, like you feel sick and you are sweating and your head aches and you're vomiting and you have diarrhea and it's all at the same time. You are sick, according to traditional healthcare. But what I know and what I want you to know and the successful chiropractors know is you're actually super healthy. If you were sick, you'd die. You got poisoned. You ate something toxic to the body. But this thing we call innate, you heard Dr. Glass mention that, this thing we call innate, which is the inborn intelligence that's way smarter than my educated intelligence. It's the thing that took two cells, one sperm, one ovum. Boom, look at me. I'm here. My kids are here. Dr. Glass, you're here. I can't do that. I can't think my way into that. AI can't do that. But when we honor that, we realize that food poisoning is actually a healthy response because your body's recognized the poison and it's purging it. It doesn't give a damn how you feel. It ain't going to be fun, but it's going to save your life. See, you're not sick, you're healthy. And then on the other hand of that, and I'm touching on this because this is why I think chiropractors succeed. A chiropractor that actually understands, and I'm not talking about educatedly, I'm talking about innately, like down here in the core. I believe this. I believe the number one reason people die in our world is because of ignorance. And I don't mean that in like, oh, they're stupid, they're dumb. They just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. People die because they've been told their whole life that if you feel good, you're healthy, and if you feel bad, you're sick. And that is absolutely a lie. And that lie has been promulgated by big farm and big food and big industry for decades and centuries and centuries. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. It's the fact that when a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer, God forbid, on self-exam, on an annual exam, on average, those cells have been replicating into cancer cells for over a decade, symptom-free. Symptom-free. I don't know. You disappeared on me, Dr. Glass. Hopefully you're still there, but I think I'm still recording. So I'm going to keep going. They are symptom-free. The sick care system is waiting for them to develop symptoms to go, oh, we should do something about it. Successful chiropractors understand the philosophy of that. They want to keep people well as long as they possibly can. That is the future of health. And that's where the future of technology is going to go. And I believe that is where the future of all of this is going to take you. So I think the future for chiropractic is extremely bright. I think people are more and more, well, I know people are more and more connected to it. More people are going toward it. More people are involving their families. It is not we currently serve 1 to 3% of the population of North America. 1 to 3%. So unlimited potential as long as you are committed, you're passionate, and you educate yourself. So we may have lost our host. I think I'm still recording because I still see the live. But look, on behalf of Dr. Glass, because I have another call to get to, and I'm sure he does too, and you do too. This has been a great interview. Thank you, Dr. Glass, if you can patch this in. But mostly thank you for listening, whoever you are and wherever you are. I hope and pray that I get to see you from a stage, at a seminar, at an event, or somewhere. Oh, you're back. I was just closing up because I said he got cut off.
Yeah.
I was literally just thanking you and thanking them, really, and hoping that I get to see them, in the chiropractic, as we refer to them as the highways of byways of the world. And you're doing great work, because these are the people. Talk about adjusting kids. These are the kids. These are the real kids, and that we can create a better world by taking care of people when they're younger in anything. And if you're considering becoming a chiropractor, consider this my endorsement.
Isn't it wild, just off on a tangent, but isn't it wild from a metaphorical standpoint that we talk about birth trauma, we talk about preconception as being like where that initial insult happens that may set a trajectory on someone's life that looks completely different than it would look if that mom who was pregnant wasn't subluxated, was getting adjusted, was eating well, was taking care of herself and thinking empowering thoughts. And how a prospective student going into chiropractic school is really only being nurtured by the profession's admissions departments, the school's admissions departments, not really being nurtured by the chiropractors, by the chiropractic students. I mean, the incongruency is kind of fascinating to me, that the pediatric practice has grown so exponentially in the last 20 years, in large part because of you. And we still haven't really seen anybody recognize that parallel of like how many of our students are, let's just say 80% of the students are there for the right reason. They're maybe just not as focused or committed as they could be. 10% are fully focused and committed and running in the direction of becoming chiropractors of their dreams. And then 10% are there because they made the wrong choice, or it was a fallback option. They're uninspired, they're unenthusiastic. And it's like, let's not place more emphasis or importance on any of those populations. Everybody's important, So no student left behind, no child left behind. It's really kind of inspiring to me. I just love connecting with people such as yourself, who are innovators and have a big picture way of thinking about it, and also have been around and been effective in what you've been up to for so long. So it's like, for me to just introduce the pre-chiro concept to you is like enough for me to be happy, with my day. It's like, I did something good today just by planting that seed in your consciousness that these students really do need our help. And it is a segment that hasn't really been acknowledged as existing even, let alone like, really being supported.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, it's, I've talked about that a long time, that, people go, well, how come some chiropractors graduate? And I'm like, well, let's look at the birth process. They're forced to take all these tests and learn all the stuff that is required. You got to do it, but it's like not necessarily aligned. And then they're kind of ripped out of the birth canal, and then they're inoculated with all sorts of ideas. Well, you're not going to be successful for 2 years. You got to do this. You got to do this. You can't practice there. You'll never make it here. I mean, all of these people are going to, this is how life works. My own mother, when I graduated, said, "Oh, I didn't think you could do it. Now you could become a real doctor." That's the day I graduated. Now she's like, "Oh my, what happened to you?" Right? Because they are handed off. They're kind of handed off to all the nurses, which are all the admins and the teachers. But the parents, the breastfeeding, the connection is to the soul of chiropractic, which is a chiropractor. So I guess the last thing I would say is, make sure you connect to a chiropractor, and not necessarily the one that inspired you. And I mean that with love and respect, because honor whatever that is. But like the gentleman that got me in practice, thank God he got me into becoming a chiropractor. But he actually didn't have the kind of practice that I wanted. And it took me a while. And Ron Oberstein was the first person I saw. I was like, well, I'd like to have that. And it wasn't the Mercedes. It was his purpose and his passion. Like, you got to be, I could do that. And I just like one adjustment above Atlas and I had it. It wasn't like I had to build it. I just had it. And I think that that's the metaphor here, because, you know, the earlier you can get a child on the right track, you know, I see parents trying to teach their teenager stuff, and having had 3 of them, I'm like, too late, you messed up. Sorry. Hopefully next go around when you get grandparents, you realize it's in the formative years where it actually matters, not when they're getting their degree. Too late, right? They've already got their whole, their SOPs, their standard operating procedures. They're already ingrained and trained. So yeah, this is the time. So I appreciate the work you're doing, Dr. Glass, and I appreciate all of you that are contemplating or in it now. And as long as it may look ahead, it happens so fast, man. And it's so worth it.